Jayamudiraye
Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu
Nashtaprayeshu
Nashtaprayeshu
Abhadreshu
Abhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevya
Nityam
Nityam
Bhagavata Sevaya
Sevya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke
Bhagavati Uttama
Bhagavati
Sloke
Uttama Sloke
Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki
Bhaktir Bhavati
Bhaktir
Naishtiki
Bhavati Naishtuki
Om Agnana Kinindasya Jnananjana Salakaya Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Bhutha Hare Krishna. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So the topic today is contents of the Gita summarized. As such, it is summarized in chapter 2, and our my humble attempt will be to summarize our discussions which has been going on chapter 2 for last a month or so, month or more, because 72 verses. Right, good. So since Bhagavad Gita is a continuation of messages, instructions of Lord Krishna to Arjuna, you will see a continuity flowing from chapter 1 to chapter 2, chapter 2 to chapter 3, chapter 3 to chapter 4, and then similarly the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. In the chapter 1, observing the armies, we see, right, oh, what's happening? Oh my God. We see Arjuna, after the armies are all assembled, he desires to see all the soldiers who are assembled there. And he mentions to Lord Krishna to take his chariot. Not Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, himself accepts his position of becoming a charioteer of his devotee Lord, his devotee Arjuna, right? And he mentions, so please take my chariot amidst these two armies. And Lord Krishna, just takes a chariot and he positions the chariot right in front of Bhishma Pitamaha and Dronacharya, right? And observing, the armies, especially his grandfather, his spiritual master, his Guru, and all the assembled, Arjuna starts now desiring not to fight the war. And then there are like 5 arguments given. Compassion, which is in verse 28 and to 30. Loss of enjoyment, that if I win this kingdom, I won't be able to enjoy because those whom I would like to enjoy this kingdom with won't be there. And if I lose this kingdom, I won't be able to enjoy it. So in both cases, he's thinking a lose-lose situation. loss of enjoyment, 31st to 35th verse, and fear of sinful reactions that, oh, I will incur deep, big sinful reactions by no, fighting and killing my grandfather or my spiritual master was so worthy of worship. Destructions of family traditions, that so many soldiers will die in this big war. Who will be there to perform Pindadan? No, the women won't be protected, and there'll be unwanted progeny. The destruction of family traditions, and then ultimately also indecision, which flows into the second chapter. We see, and Lord Krishna in the second chapter systematically refutes Arjuna's arguments, the compassion from 11th verse to 30th verse, a loss of enjoyment from 31st to 32nd verse, fear of sinful reactions in 33rd to 37th verse, destruction of family traditions from 45th to 46th verse, and then continues also into the third chapter 24th verse. And I think indecision also flows into the refutation of that in the third chapter. So the chapter 2 is divided into various sections. The first 10 verses, we see Arjuna has further doubts, and ultimately is confused of his duty and he surrenders to Krishna. Right. Section 2 is from 11th verse to 30th verse, where Lord Krishna now takes a position from a charioteer or from a friend to a spiritual master and starts instructing Arjuna. And from 11th verse to 30th verse, he starts now giving different arguments on the basis of jnana, more specifically called Sankhya Yoga, and is encouraging Arjuna to fight, but there is no death for the soul, the body can never be saved. From 31st to 38th verse, we see he takes a little bit lower position on the platform Karma Kanda, right? Karma Kanda consciousness, that by performing prescribed duties, you will gain material enjoyment, right? Arjuna's argument that, oh, if he will lose the battle, he won't be able to enjoy, or if he'll win the battle, he won't be able to enjoy. He's turning it around, where he's saying that if he loses the battle, he does not have to lose anything. He's now for a Kshatriya, no, there is nothing more important than dying on the battlefield. And so he will, that stands also at an heavenly kingdom. And if he wins the battle, also he'll get an unrivaled kingdom. Right. So in both cases, he's showing win-win situation, right? Material gains, having a kingdom from fighting, and if he does not participate in the battle, he will incur infamy. Arjuna is thinking that he will incur sinful reactions. He is saying that if he does not fight the battle, he will incur sin from not fighting. And then section 4 from 39 to 53rd verse, Lord Krishna talks about Buddhi Yoga. Specifically here, Buddhi Yoga is defined as Niskam Karma Yoga. Right. And on that principle also telling Arjuna to fight the battle. Perform your duty without thinking about the results. Results are not in your hand. Right. So on all these different platforms, he's encouraging Arjuna to fight the battle. And then section 5, ultimately he's leading him from Buddhi Yoga, the Roman person performing Buddhi Yoga, that consciousness, in that full Krishna consciousness, will attain the stage of Samadhi. Right? And so fight this battle, becoming fixed in Krishna consciousness and perform this duty, because duty performed on the instruction of the spiritual master, or here the Supreme Lord himself, is a karma. There are different types of karma. Also, preliminary glimpse is given, right, in the second chapter. Yep, that's overview, which we just went over. So let's see. Going back to section 1, Arjuna's further doubts, where he starts off with verse number 1, where he's addressing Sanjay said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan Krishna spoke the following words. And various verses, Krishna is referred with different names, and it's very significant when a specific name is referred, right? Where on one side we see Dhritarashtra very happy to hear that Arjuna was so bewildered and he does not want to fight the war, because he was thinking, now I don't have to lose anything, right? My sons won't be harmed. There won't be an impact of this Kurukshetra, where initially in the first chapter he was fearful that Dharma is not on his side. Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra, Dharma is not on his side. And at the same time, the battle is being fought in Kurukshetra, a holy place. He was very fearful in the first chapter. So he's becoming happy to hear that Arjuna was bewildered. But immediately that was not that long. I mean, it was short-lived, because Madhusudan means the killer of the Madhu demon. And now Madhusudan also, once is also referred as Ari Sudan. Krishna is now going to kill the doubts in Arjuna's mind, like he killed the Madhu demon. He does not appreciate the sentiments of Arjuna and calls him Anarya in the second verse. Kutastva kasmalam idam vishame samupasitam anarya justam asvargyam akirti karam Arjuna. My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. And he's insulting Arjuna by calling him Clabium, impotent, and Shudram, petty, low class, to get rid of his weakness. And Romans telling Arjuna that how did this petty weakness start, Romans, coming into your heart? It does not befit you. You fight. So in that context, then Arjuna is mentioning from the fourth verse that it's not weakness of my heart. This is generosity of my heart. And he addresses again Krishna as Madhusudan and then Arisudan. Right? That please dispel these thoughts in my mind. You know, it's not the weakness of the heart, but I'm kind of feeling why I have to fight these soldiers, this my spiritual master, my grandfather. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Their enjoyment will be tainted with blood. And this point is making in different verses. throughout the second chapter. It's better for me to live as a beggar. Okay, my Kshatriya Dharma tells me to fight this war, but how can I fight those who are so much worthy of my respect? Right. And verse 6, he ultimately depicts his confused state of mind, and he says, nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. Indecision. Should I conquer them or I should not conquer them? Right. And ultimately, we see that in verse 7, he takes shelter of Krishna in the confused state of mind. Kalpane dosha pahata sabhava prichhami tvam dharma samudacheta yat shreyasya nishitan ruhitan me shishyate ham sadhimam tvam prapannam. He takes shelter of Krishna. Right. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So he's accepting Krishna, his spiritual master is surrendering to Lord Krishna and now really requesting Lord Krishna to instruct him, to guide him, because he's completely lost composure. Right. So he's telling Krishna to dispel his perplexities. Right. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains so nicely about Arjuna's perplexity. Right. By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. Right. In every step, there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. Right. So Arjuna is completely perplexed, but that perplexity, he approaches, he does a very good thing, he approaches, takes shelter of his spiritual master or of Lord Krishna. Yeah, right. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not therefore remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. Message given here. One should not approach, one should not remain in material perplexities, but approach a spiritual master. Right. Oh. So immediately from verse 8, after Arjuna accepts Krishna as his spiritual master, the relationship changes between Krishna and Arjuna. Now Krishna takes a position of a spiritual master instead of a charioteer or friend. Right. And if in the 8th verse he asks, why do you need a guru? Just perform duty and fight. But it's further stating, Arjuna is further stating, I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. And in verse 9, he finishes expressing his doubts, and Krishna prepares to reply. Right. Word prahasa means like smiling. Krishna is becoming very grave, not just friendly. Because the discussion between spiritual master and disciple is serious matter, is grave. Ooh. Right. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, it appears that the talk between the master and the disciple was openly exchanged in the presence of both the armies so that all are benefited. So makes a very important point. So the talks of Bhagavad Gita are not for any particular person, society, or community, but they are for all. And friends or enemies are equally entitled to hear them. Very good point. which is established here. Because no, Arjuna is close associate of the Supreme Lord. How can he be overcome by this material perplexity? Right? And it's mentioned by our acharyas that no, the Yoga Maya, the internal energy of the Supreme Lord, acts in situations like that to cover a pure devotee. So that for the benefit of others in general, he will approach spiritual master will approach the Supreme Lord, and through him this message would be relayed. Evam parampara praptam imam rajashya vidu. In the fourth chapter, we will see further where Lord Krishna is mentioning that this disciplic succession was broken at one time, and to re-establish the disciplic succession, he is giving this instruction to Arjuna. Right. Similar thing we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Yudhishthira Maharaj, after fighting, after the end of the war, he doesn't want to take the kingdom. He is perplexed. Right? He doesn't want to become the king. After the entire war is done. And Srila Prabhupada in the Prabhupada mentions, so again he is covered by Yoga Maya so that Lord Krishna can guide him to Bhishma Pitamaha, who can then further explain him about higher principles on administration, higher principles also on the duties of a king before he leaves his body. So, nice point made. So, we see in this particular section from 11th verse to 30th verse, Lord Krishna is mentioning about Jnana Yoga, as more specifically Sankhya Yoga, where he explains that we're not this body, we are the soul. Right? Death is just a matter of the soul changing body, so it's not a big thing. Dehinasmi yata dehe kamaram javanam jara tatha dehantara prapti dhyatatanamyati. Just as an embodied soul passes from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly at the time of death, it passes into another body. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. And so many words he mentions from 11th verse to 13th verse, and then there is a gap, 14, 15, he explains some other principles, and then continues from 16th verse to 25th verse. In 14, 15, the other principle is performance of duty must not be affected by sense perceptions. So it includes the basic principles of yoga, detachment, the soul cannot be killed and the body can be saved. So 5. Right. Yeah. Krishna shows he doesn't appreciate Arjuna's ideas, calls him a fool. The wise don't do what you are doing, so you are not wise. He established the personal nature of spiritual life right at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Right? Natveham jatu nasam natvene me janadipaha. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor any of these things. Right? So establish a personal form. That personal nature of spiritual life. That not that ultimately everybody becomes one. Right? And Arjuna was so worried about killing Bhishma and Drona, but Krishna is saying you won't be killing them in verse 13. And then 14, 15. So you have to be tolerant. These things happen anywhere. Mata spasha tu kaunteya. And this is a basic principle of yoga, detachment, essential in all yogas. So he explains about incarnation in this. Right. Verse 16 is another further instruction which comes as a slap Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubayo api dishtuantaha, tve anayo tattvadarshina. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Right. So soul is eternal. Body is temporary, has no real standing. Changes when it is existing. So it's called non-existent. So Arjuna had put forward logic and compassion. We shouldn't fight because I'm going to be killing these dear and beloved people. And Lord Krishna is changing that perception. He's mentioning verse 19 that soul is neither the doer nor is action done to him. If one thinks that he is a doer, then he's not in knowledge. If one thinks that someone is being slain, he is not in knowledge. He gives very clear definition of the soul. No jayate miyati va kadachina, no birth or death, nayam bhutva never came into being, will not come into being, will again come into being. Or is unborn, it's eternal, permanent, oldest. So many qualities of soul is then mentioned in subsequent verses. Krishna replies that you're not going to be able to stop them changing bodies by not fighting. Right. And continues the basic definition of the soul. The body can be taken to be like cloth. Vasansi jinani atavyahaya. Like Bhishma's body is like the old cloth, and we are talking only of exchanging it for new cloth. So there is no fault. Right. Now our Acharya has explained that no, Krishna is repeating this message again and again to remove doubts of Arjuna, which has overcome him. The soul cannot be cut into pieces by any weapon. Nainam chindatne sastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, nachenam pedyantyapa, no sosati maruta. Nor burnt by fire, nor consumed by water, nor withered by the wind. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. It is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, eternal, the same. The soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Right? Athacha. Then he says, but if, however, like indication of a change in the topic, in the words, that till now Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that with his weapons which he is holding, he cannot hurt the soul, so he should fight. But now Krishna is reversing the argument that the temporary body cannot be saved. Right. So in one sense, you cannot kill the soul. Soul cannot be destroyed. In the other sense, other side, body, temporary body has to perish one time. Right. Yeah. So these are various aspects which we discussed. The soul is indestructible, individual, Satchidananda, full of eternity, knowledge and bliss, situated in the region of the heart. Right. Also, there is not only soul, there is also a super soul. Srila Prabhupada, while explaining the Prabhupada, mentioned about consciousness, which is symptom of the soul, and then super consciousness, super soul. And both are sitting. He referred Upanishad. Both are sitting on a tree. Just like two birds are sitting on a tree, one bird is doing the activity, other bird is just watching. Right. It is eternal. It is changing bodies. It is infinitesimally small. And it is inconceivable. It is infinitesimally small, just like a drop of the ocean has the same qualities as the ocean, but it is not the ocean. But at the same time, you cannot differentiate it from the ocean, right? Because it's the top of the ocean, right? So this philosophy of simultaneously one and different. Ray of the sun is the same spark, but the ray of the sun is considered as the all-pervading aspect of the sun. But there is a localized aspect which is the sun globe. Right? Matter is formless. The soul gives form to matter. When the soul leaves the body, we get rid of the body as early as possible. Otherwise, it starts disintegrating. Right? So we have two forms of body: the gross body made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and the subtle body made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Right. So, in 26 to 30 verse, when Lord Krishna reverses the point, he says, if you, however, think that the soul perishes, the body that cannot perish, from different point of view, Krishna is mentioning to Arjuna, from point of view of those who accept soul, from point of view of those who do not accept soul. Right. So he explains its various aspects in verse 27, verse 28, and then he describes the soul as amazing in verse 29 and summarizes the section in the verse 30. So let's see the summary of that. The refutations used by Krishna in text 12 to 30 to dispel Arjuna's material compassion. First concept, individuality is never lost, right? In the 12th verse, Natveham jatunasam natveneme janatipaha. All living entities are eternal and continue their individuality in future without interruption. Therefore, don't lament for death. But then Arjuna is arguing, oh, change of body is still a cause of lamentation. Right. And this refutes in the 13th verse. Change of body is as natural as change of boyhood to youth to old age. Nobody laments for such a natural change. Arjuna may argue, but we do lament for loss of youth to old age. And he refutes further. No lamentation. Right. Attachment to current body or relatives will still be a cause of lamentation. Mata Spashatu Kaunteya. This they arise due to sense perception. No choice but to tolerate such non-permanent dualities. And Krishna establishes vision of seers of the truth and rebukes Arjuna in 16 to 18th verse, saying that soul is eternal, body is temporary, implies that Kauravas cannot escape death even if Arjuna does not kill. The body is sure to end. Arjuna may argue violence incurs sinful reaction. And Krishna refutes that violence under my direction does not incur any sinful reactions. In the 21st verse of the second chapter. Right. Bhishma and Drona will lose their present bodies, which are sources of enjoyment for them. And Lord Krishna says, change of body is like a dress. They'll get fresh bodies and thus happiness. And then he says, oh, anyway, Arjuna's weapons cannot kill the soul. Right. The Kauravas are anyway going to die. Don't think that your weapons are going to kill them. And one may think there is no soul, the body is all in all, then Krishna further establishes, even if there is no soul, since still there is no cause of lamentation for loss of chemicals. If you think that it's just body is made of chemicals, why are we lamenting for loss of chemicals? And 4 points of the vision of seers of truth. Clear vision helps us, one, avoid lamentation on bodily platform, no death for the soul and no endurance for the body. One can see that no sin is involved in such violence because it is done under Krishna's direction. And with knowledge of soul and body, change of body is compared to change of dress. No weapon or can kill or harm the soul. So these are characteristics of the soul. It's individual, it's eternal, it is soul is unborn, indestructible and eternal, it's immeasurable, soul never undergoes changes, soul is steady, immutable, cannot be cut, burnt, dried or weight, immovable, unchangeable, everlasting, and eternal the same, present everywhere, sarvagata, how to pursue the soul, it's invisible and inconceivable, symptom of the soul is pursued by individual consciousness. Then yeah, let's skip this section because of the time. Because somebody could argue that violence, or if you think that it's by killing somebody there's no sin, then I can commit violence. And then Sri Prabhupada in the lecture is mentioning in the purport criteria to use violence. Killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state as well as the law of the Lord. Who decides the proper utility? A man situated in complete knowledge. Right. Like a spiritual master, Supreme Lord here. And how to justify Arjuna's use of violence? He was killing for the principle of religion, not whimsically. When Krishna orders violence, it is for supreme justice. Just like when the king, or in the present context, the president says, oh, we have to go to war. The soldiers are not punished for going to war or killing somebody because they went on war. Okay, I'm going to skip that. And then we see in the second section, Krishna is taking the lower position, Karma Kanda section, where he's refuting the point of Arjuna that he won't be able to enjoy the performance of duty according to one's varnashram. One gets higher birth. Like if he fights as a Kshatriya, he will get higher birth. Right. So, goal of karma kanda, fruitful activities to reach higher destination for enjoyment. Gains come from following one's duty. Losses come from not following, incurred sin. But dishonor is worse than death for a Kshatriya. Right. They will consider you a coward if you do not fight. Right. Verse 35. So you will now you are thinking that by becoming generous, by having this compassion, but you will incur infamy. And we see the reversal of logic from lose to win-win. And end of Karma Kanda section speaks about sinful reactions. And then from 39 to 45th verse, we see Buddhi Yoga or Niskam Karma Yoga. Fight but without any reaction. Arjuna's fighting will not bring any sinful reaction if you fight simply because it is Krishna's desire. Akam, with his mind focused on Krishna in full resolve. To rise above Karma Kanda section of Vedas by knowing the ultimate goal of the Vedas. Right. So, Krishna is not describing. Hare Krishna. Hello, hello. What's happening? Here, or somebody is not mute. Okay. The topmost stage of Buddhi Yoga is when Krishna blesses a devotee with full Buddhi or intelligence. And then we see further this explanation is given. Niha Vikramana Swasti Pratyavana Vidyate. There's no loss of diminution when performing this activity for the Lord. Devotional service, the activity is performed in devotion to the Lord is never lost, right? And Vyasatmika Buddhi, Srila Prabhupada further explains that in the second chapter, how he got influenced by these words, and especially the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on that two words, that how one should become resolutely determined, right? Uh, whether it is day or night, no, the instruction of the spiritual master should be core to a person's heart, and one need to carry out the duty and the instruction of the spiritual master. I desire only to follow his instructions, whether I'm happy or distressed, whether the material world remain or is destroyed. I don't care, there is no loss for me. I simply must carry the orders of my spiritual master. Being fixed upon his order is determined intelligence and devotional service. Only by being fixed on his orders can such determined intelligence prosper. Right. So when one is working on performing karma, he is unattached to the fruits of his work. That is called karma yoga. So he further explains about niskam karma yoga in the 47th verse we see, right? So on that platform also, you surrender. Art of working means working without getting the fruit of one's work, detachment from knowledge, but working frees one from sinful reactions. And then we have the 51st verse where he's talking about liberation from material bondage. Right. Where karma kanda is referred to as the dense forest of delusion in 52nd verse. So, but if one performs from karma kanda, he rises to the platform of karma yoga or niskam karma yoga. Right. Ooh. So many. Haribo. Let me just. Yeah. Krishna's motivating strategy to convince Arjuna changes at the start from 10th, 11th verse. Initially, from 11th to 30th verse is talking about Jnana Yoga, and 31st to 38th verse is talking about Karma Kanda, 39 to 53rd verse is talking about Niskam Karma Yoga, and very soft. Okay. Yeah. So the benefits of Buddhi Yoga: freedom from bondage of work, no loss or diminution of this path, saves one from the greatest danger, resolute determination, Vyasatmika Buddhi, freedom from good and bad reactions, freedom from cycle of birth and death, indifferent to Vedic rituals, realization of relationship with Krishna as eternal servitor. So ultimately, one achieves samadhi and goes back to Godhead. So that samadhi stage is explained from 54 to 72nd verse. That Arjuna is asking that question about how does he speak, how does he sit, how does he walk, what are his symptoms. So he's talking about just like the self-realized soul has renounced all things of sense gratification through having found pleasure in itself. The inner meaning of the question is, how is his mentality and words affected by affection, equanimity, or anger of others? Such a pure soul is neither mentally disturbed, elated, attached, or fearful or angry. He verbally neither praises nor criticizes the good and evil he attains. How does he see it? What is his mentality when his senses are restrained from their objects? Like the tortoise example is given. Just like a tortoise restrains his senses. Such a person remains fixed in transcendental consciousness by virtue of his higher taste for the service of Krishna. He is fixed in consciousness because he has a higher taste. He's not at all tortured. He's getting something better. So that's how he's wrapping this particular section by talking about Niskam Karma Yoga. So initially starts off with Karma Kanda, a lower position, then Niskam Karma Yoga, that even on Niskam Karma Yoga platform you fight, and ultimately on that platform you'll reach a stage of Samadhi because you are completely performing that activity not for yourself, you're performing it for the Supreme Lord. That consciousness reach a stage of Samadhi. Then in 62nd and 63rd verse, he also shows a ladder of how a person can fall down. Dhyatu Vishyan Pumsam Sangate Swapujate Sangat Sanjate Kaman Kaman Krodha Abhijayate Krodhat Bhavati Samoha Samoha Smriti Vibhrama Smriti Vibhrama Buddhi Nasa Pranashyati. It starts with contemplating the objects of the senses. Like, we contemplate that, how can I enjoy this sense, this object? That leads to attachment to that object, which develops into lust. And if lust is unfulfilled, anger arises, which leads to complete delusion, bewilderment of memory, intelligence is lost, and one falls down. Right. And then now further he explains about how does he walk, how does he actually engage his senses, about this Sita Pragya, free from attachment and aversion and satisfied in Krishna consciousness, is fixed by his intelligence. Here is a contrast of a man who doesn't control his senses, who doesn't engage his senses in the service of the Lord. Right, the 66th verse. And then there are two kinds of people who restrain the senses from their objects. One who is endeavoring for self-realization, and one who just can't, who is being forced to do by circumstance. So the idea is that one should be internally renounced and active externally. All these symptoms that were just explained were all internal. How should one act? He should act in such a way that he is internally renounced. The activity of one fixed in transcendence may superficially be exactly the same as the activities of one who is a complete materialist. But internally the difference is that they are like the night and day, right? That which is a day for a materialist is like a night for a spiritualist. That which is like a day of a spiritualist is like a night, because the materialist is blinded. He does not know. So the art to become internally materially renounced and internally materially attached to Krishna, that is Krishna consciousness. And in that full Krishna consciousness, ultimately one will enter into the kingdom of God. And Srila Prabhupada summarizes that, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur mentioned that this chapter has the contents of the entire Bhagavad Gita. The subject matters discussed in this chapter, we see about Karma Yoga, we see about Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Right. There's a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga, more detailed discuss about Karma and Jnana. It talks about transmigration, it talks about the soul, it talks about soul coming in contact with different modes, controlling the senses. Many topics are briefly touched upon. That's why it is contents of the Gita summarized. And then Lord Krishna expands on this further in the remainder of the chapters, which we'll discuss further, verse by verse, from third chapter, on the principles which are established in second chapter. It will be elaborated further. The third chapter, fourth chapter, fifth chapter, sixth chapter, right? Like the Bhagavad Gita is divided into three sections. First 6 chapters, mostly talking about Karma Yoga, ultimately leading to Ashtanga Yoga and establishing Bhakti as the topmost. Then 7th chapter to 12th chapter, this talks about Bhakti Yoga more in detail. And then 13th chapter to 18th chapter is again talks about Jnana Yoga. Right. So the Guhyatam, the most confidential topics are in between 7 to 12. Yeah, there are many slides. I can share these numbers. So I'm going to take questions here for discussions. Hari,
Yeah, wonderful. It was amazing. It was
there are
mind-blowing.
many topics, so I have to
So
cut.
much wonderful details. So wow, it's amazing. Yeah, it's so nice. Mridanda Prabhu just posted. Can this be shared?
Okay, yeah. Sorry.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Devotees, please, open up. This is the section for question. If you have any reflections, comments, questions, or anything to add, please, please open up. Please raise.
Sorry, it was like kind of flying from one verse to another verse, because it's such a vast topic to cover in 1 hour, the entire summary of it. I personally also felt that I was kind of flying from one verse to another verse to another verse.
It's so much wonderful. It's a very detailed study, very detailed.
And I will recommend, it's like also took the help of Gauranga Darshan Prabhu's summary of the Bhagavad Gita. It's very detailed. It's kind of mentioned various topics. I just touched a little bit on it.
It's very good. Wow, so detailed.
Yeah.
Anybody has any questions, any reflections? Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Wonderful topic to discuss.
Everybody felt like, oh, I was kind of doing a poor job, so no questions.
Prabhu, if I may ask,
Yeah, Tony.
our friendship is based on question and answers. I just had this realization since so many years. And on the same,
95 or 94, begin with, yeah.
yeah, 95.
95, yeah.
Ramapad Swami introduced us. Thank you. Prabhu, on the topic of questions, and I had posted it yesterday or today also. Now, see this topic, whatever it be related to Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Now, different devotees, they discuss a particular verse or a particular point. Then also we read Prabhupada's books and different disciples of Prabhupada's, our own Guru Maharajas, other Guru Maharajas. And there is all this information. So there may be a particular point like Sarva Dharman Parityaja. So Prabhupada has explained something and his realizations, his purports, correct? His lectures also, there would be something new coming up. So the more you read, the more you hear, um, a better understanding you get. But that isn't enough, because then someone else will say something about it, and there's a new flavor or a new realization to that. So what I'm thinking is these question and answers is just to get deeper and deeper into the subject matter. And at the same time, my concern for me personally is there's no end to questions. It can go on and on and on and on. How much of a vidwan or how much of an subject matter expert can one be? And I'm more inclined to the gopis and the gopas. They are not intellectuals. They're very simple people who just kind of have, who just love Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a catch-22 situation that the more you study and the more you learn, then more questions come up and the more you want to know. And at the same time, that it's like walking a razor edge of a sword, that, I'll just fall into this intellectual trap or it'll keep going on and on. So, and I can understand intellectually that without knowing him, how can you love him? And
Mm-hmm.
how much to know him, how much to, that you want to know more and more. So, how do
Mm-hmm.
we balance this? At what stage will that love develop?
Mm. Very good. Yeah. Well, first of all, these topics are relishable, just like they are compared to this ripened mango, where more you'll taste it, more and more nectar you will get. Right. Srimad Bhagavatam is also compared to a ripened mango, a spotless Purana. And discussing and conversing the topics of the Lord, right? Tushyanti Charamanti is, brings bliss, not necessarily uh, just based on knowledge or intelligence. No, it's just like the Gopas were also discussing about the Lord Krishna, in the mood of Sakya, not about the knowledge aspect of it or something, but in the mood of Sakya, they were discussing Krishna. They will associate with Krishna as well as. And the Vaidhi Bhakti platform, for us to come to that particular stage, right? This Adau Shraddha, initial faith is necessary. There is a Lord. And then to form up that faith, one need to associate with likely minded people, sadhu sangha, and perform devotional services, bhajana kriya, where you'll get more and more nourishment. That's where chanting becomes essential. This reading Srimad Bhagavatam, discussing about Srimad Bhagavatam, right? There are four kinds of people. Chaturvida bhajante mam, jana sukrito arjuna, artho jigyashu arthi, jnani cha bharasta sabha. No, jnani. No, means okay. No, means really, one is inquisitive, one is no, means really want to know more. Initially, we may have come to this movement because of either distress condition or in different conditions. But ultimately, it becomes our hey, what am I going to do without association of devotees? What am I going to do without Krishna consciousness? How much, quote unquote, I can think that I'm going to enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord? Might try, but I will fail in my pursuits and again bank on uh, performing Krishna consciousness, right? So just like initially something which may feel that it's natural for us, that we'll enjoy. Now we'll go into a roller coaster ride, we'll enjoy. But now it kind of pricks us. Hey, is this real enjoyment? And so the real enjoyment of a devotee then becomes more about relishing the topics about the Supreme Lord. So, so the discussion should be more based on that. Hey, I don't want to discuss this topic to get more intelligent so that I can become a Muni and have a difference of opinion with another Muni, right? But the discussion should be more based, how my Krishna consciousness is increasing from this exchange of relishing the topic. And that exchange will make us more and more closer to Krishna. Sukham kartum avyat. This devotional service will be then joyfully performed. It won't be performed dryly that, somebody has to tell, Nani, you have to chant 16 now. Nani, you do this. No. Then it comes to that platform nista. And before that, another niviti happens and all. And it comes to a platform nista, but then. So that's how I kind of see that this question answers helps one to relish. No, it's not question answers. It's basically, not that when somebody is inferior when he's asking and I'm answering, I become superior. No, it's more about exchanging each other's view. Tushyanti charamanti cha, the four slokas, Chatusloki Bhagavad Gita. No? It's one sloka. Machitamat gata prana, bodhyantischa parasparam, tushyanti charamanti cha. What are the devotees do? Pure devotees will converse on the topics about the Supreme Lord. So these are more conversing about the topics about the Supreme Lord. And so that's why we say, sharing reflections, sharing this, sharing that. The topic. Or somebody does more research. In this particular place, it is mentioned more in depth about this. So it's ultimately, right, as you mentioned about the Gopas or the Gopis, simple-hearted. No? Ultimately, we want to come to that stage of just like that illiterate Brahmana. No, not about knowledge. He knew, it's about the essence of that knowledge. The sentiment, Nanam Galada Sudharaya. What is my checkpoint? While chanting the holy name, are my eyes filled with tears? Do I see standing of the hair in my hand? Do I start trembling? That sentiment is the higher stage of devotional service, Bhava, Asakti, so that stage is, we can come to that by following the process. But while following the process, one thing which happens, again, when we discuss more, our mind away from unwanted things. Right? Otherwise, I will think, when does the class get over? And I can do something else. I can watch a TV. I can do this. I can do that. It will get us away from. That's why we hear more lectures, or we hear kids hear, or we chant, or we read. So that Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. Right. We engage in performing these 9 processes of devotional services. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Prabhu. Perfect. You answered it. So basically, the more we know about Krishna, it should develop our admiration and our, reverence, and then that will develop to love Krishna. And of course, for the devotees also, there's a better appreciation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The glories of the Supreme Lord is unlimited. Like it's mentioned that Ananda Shesha, he has millions of hoods and he's glorifying the glories of Supreme Lord. And it's not enough. It's unlimited. We hear about this topic in this particular day of Lord Brahma, Lord Krishna performed this activity. He may perform the same activity or some other activity in the other day of Lord Brahma. Right. And so there are so many topics which at times we may not have even heard about it or read about it. And then we hear about the Goswamis conversing about it. So, it's so much, quite in depth, detail. But now, whatever we can grasp, we can know. Ultimately, the barometer should be that, means I should have more and more attachment to Lord Krishna and his devotees. It should not become dry. Oh, now, means, on mental speculative mode of dry intelligence or something. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other reflections?
Yeah, wonderful. In the second canto, sixth chapter, it is mentioned that we can count the sands on these entire planets, the entire universe, but we cannot count the innumerable activities and the incarnations of the Lord.
Yeah.
It's so vast. Yep.
At times, many things we won't be able to comprehend by our material ground senses. Atasi Krishna Namadi na Bhavat Krayam Indriya. Evo Mukhai Jivadao Swami was spoken, but by performance of devotional service, we'll get more comprehension. On certain topics, we'll be able to comprehend.
That's where the test of faith comes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Because it could be something which is so confusing and then it just kind of.
Yeah.
So that's where the faith is required to keep.
At times when I was thinking about that example of the Brahman and the cobbler, right? The Brahmana, when Narmani mentioned, the exchange, what was Lord Vishnu doing? He was passing an elephant through the eye of a needle. And Brahmana said, how is that possible? And a cobbler, sitting under a banyan tree, when he heard, that the Lord was passing the elephant through the eye of a needle. And he said, why is it not possible? Daily I'm sitting under that tree and I'm doing my work, and these seeds of the banyan tree are falling, and in that seed, the entire banyan tree, so many seeds, minute seeds in there, and there, in each minute seed, there's the entire banyan tree is encapsulated. So what is so big of the Lord not being able to pass the elephant to the eye of a needle? No, it's easy for him. So it becomes for us, no, for him to lift the entire Govardhan, he does not have to even lift it. He can, but he's just performing his activity so that to give pleasure. Uh, all his leelas, all his transcendental activities. The material angle, we cannot comprehend it. It's not possible for a small boy, able to kill Putana, 3 mile long, Putana, so powerful. Yeah. Yep. That's the assurance which is given by the Lord. Janma karma chamidivya. One who understands that, he does not take birth again. So, yep. Okay. What's next? Any other
Anybody else? Anybody else has anything to add or any reflections? Anybody has anything, any questions? Okay. Otherwise, let's conclude. Let's also thank His Grace Madhupati Prabhuji for having a wonderful detailed summary of the second chapter. It was so nice. So let's say Hari Bol Prabhuji 2-3 times also. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Also, let us Hari Bol to Manish Prabhu and team for having a wonderful beginning kirtan. It was so ecstatic, so nice. Let's also say Hari Bol to Prabhuji and team. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari
Also,
Bol.
all the dear devotees for joining. As we know that it's Saturday evening, so many things are there as a family members. Yes, but still we can understand that this is the eagerness. This is the lavlyam, right? The greed for hearing Krishna. That must be there. That is our that's our this called it purifies us. That lavlyam, that greed, that intense desire to hear the Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavad Katha, association of devotees hearing the holy name. It's all there, all package is there. Just to be there, that's all we need. So rest is assured. Thank you, dear devotees, for joining. So let's pay all our obeisance to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, saying Vancha Kalpatarubhya Prabha Sindhu Bheva
Sindhu Bheva
Patitanam
Patitanam
Pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Namo Namaha
Namo Namaha.
Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai
Jai.
Bhagavad Gita ki Jai
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Jai Gauri Prabhupada
Jai. Hari Bol. Thank you, Madhupati Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.